Hello, thank you very much for tuning in. Stuart, Unrepented Atheist here. Welcome to my live stream. I wasn't going to do a live stream tonight, but I decided to sort of take out a pen and paper and make a few notes about what I might want to talk about. And I suddenly realized that I've got quite a few topics which I can talk about. I probably didn't want to make a video because I only sort of half listened to Matt Dillahunty on the line this morning when I was working. Wasn't really paying great attention. Because that tends to be the focus of my live stream, I didn't really think I would have much, but well, I picked out one of the calls that I wanted to talk about, and I've made some notes about various other topics. So obviously, this is the bizarre time of year for atheists. I suppose the Christian time of year when atheists have got to celebrate the birth of Christ, the birth of the Savior, the salvation of all mankind. So I'm going to talk about that as one of my topics because I've also been going to church over the Christmas period with my partner who's a Christian. So Kayla Martin's asking, what do I do for my work? Okay, well, I sell physical products online, mostly on eBay, and I've got two businesses. One provides me with the bulk of my income, and it's quite a niche area that I'm in. And then I've got this other business which is not providing me too much money at the moment, but I've got hopes for it that it will provide me with a good return. So yeah, I mean, basically, I trade in physical goods online. I ship out product. I merchandise products, and that's what I've been doing for about 20 years. And before that, I was in retail. I actually had physical bricks and mortar shops selling various products. Um, yeah, well, everybody's got to make a living somehow. And when I was growing up as a schoolboy, I got a taste for buying and selling. I lived in Canada when I was in the 60s. My family emigrated to Canada, and one of my earliest memories is going to a car boot sale in Canada, and it was a very, very hot day, and we made some orange juice out of this kind of powder. I don't know what it was, but we simply mixed fresh water with this kind of powder, which turned into like orange squash. And one of my earliest memories is that we were one of the only people doing this on a really hot day in Canada, and we were selling little plastic cups of this sort of artificial orangeade or whatever it was for 5 cents or a nickel, a Canadian nickel. And I remember this huge pile of money, and it gave me a taste for buying and selling. And even at school, when I was at school in when we eventually came back to Great Britain, I got into trouble for running a business at school. I was buying candy, sweets from the local shops, and I was selling them for double the price in school. Yeah, so I mean, I never became a Richard Branson or anything like that, but I enjoyed buying and selling, making a profit, wheeling and dealing, and all that kind of thing. And I'm still doing that. One of the great things is that I don't make a fortune in money, but I've got a fortune in flexibility and having my own time and being my own boss. And that's actually more important to me than lots of money. So that's fine. But yeah, thanks for that question. So obviously, I know that there are people who are on YouTube who make a living out of YouTube, and I don't make much money out of YouTube. It's just pocket money, really. So I really just do it out of interest. Okay, so let me just talk about Christmas and what atheists do at Christmas. Yeah, um, atheist. So yeah, I'm an atheist. How do I see Christmas? Well, I suppose to coin a phrase that Richard Dawkins has been using recently, maybe I could admit that I'm some kind of cultural Christian, grew up in Christian culture, and I've been celebrating Christmas, or I've been involved in the Christian uh, celebrations for as long as I can remember at school, and uh, ever really since then. I don't really have I don't really have believers in my family. So I mean, my dad, my mum, neither of those believe, and neither of those really brought us up as Christians. But nevertheless, we all celebrated Christmas with everyone else. And when I became a sort of more serious atheist than I was, I did question whether it makes any sense for atheists to sit down or go and sing hymns and to celebrate Christmas, or whether we should make a big pompous point out of it and say, right, this is all based on superstition. This is not demonstrable, and I'm not going to support this anymore. And I'm going to pretend that Christmas doesn't exist. So I did think for some months that when Christmas rolled around, I would do that. But I changed my mind basically because I'm aware that there's a pagan element in Christian celebrations, and that at this time of the year, the winter solstice, there were celebrations going on, and that when Christianity came to Britain and in Europe, these pagan celebrations were already going on, and somehow Christianity hijacked that pagan time of the year and turned it into a Christian festival. So, um, in a way, I feel like that this time of the year should not be, um, what's the word? Um, it shouldn't be hijacked by Christians. It shouldn't be possessed. It shouldn't be defined by Christianity. So I see it more of a kind of end of year celebration, a time to remember everything that's happened in the year, um, the range of things that have happened, the good things, the bad things, what you've learned. So for me, Christmas is more about that and being with people who are in your life, and maybe contacting people that you've not seen that often, and sending them a Christmas card, that kind of thing. And it just happens to coincide with the new year. And uh, some comedian did uh, a show on, I think what he described as, what did he describe it as? There's the six the six strangest days of the year between Christmas Day and the New Year. That it does feel a bit strange. You have Christmas Day, and then you've got Boxing Day, and then you've got the 27th, and I always have trouble at that time keeping track of which day it is. What day is it today? Is it Wednesday? Is it Thursday? Did Christmas Day and Boxing Day land on a Saturday and Sunday? And I really hate that. I hate it when that happens, because then you've got 4 days in a row which are like a holiday. You've got Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. You've got 4 straight days. Fortunately, this year Christmas landed on, when did it land? It landed on a Wednesday, didn't it? Yeah, and Boxing Day was Thursday. And when that happens, New Year's Day will land on Wednesday. So I quite like it when this is the case, because we're not getting like sort of 4 days in a row of holidays. And I don't know, it feels more reasonable, because Saturday and Sunday are like sort of holidays anyway. So to sort of have holidays land on a holiday doesn't really make any sense. But anyway, that's not the way Christmas works. The 25th lands where it lands. And of course, in the world of Orthodox Christianity, Christmas Day is January the 6th, because I lived in Russia for 1 year, and when Christmas rolled around on the 25th, nobody did anything at all. There was nothing happening on the 25th in Russia. Nothing. And I said, what's going on? Why are people not celebrating? And a friend told me, well, we observe the Orthodox calendar, and Christmas lands on January the 6th in Russia. This is the old first. No, when is it? I'm not too sure, but it lands on the 6th for the Orthodox. And Christmas in the Orthodox world is not really a big deal. the big deal for Christians in the Orthodox world, I think, is Easter, possibly. But what is a big deal in Russia is not Christmas, but the New Year. That's when all the big celebrations go on. There are big, big celebrations in the New Year. I mean, far bigger than what happens here. That's when they in Russia they spread out all the food, caviar. They've got various salads saturated in mayonnaise, really luxurious salads that they make in Russia, which I quite miss. I quite miss them actually because uh, when I celebrated uh, when I celebrated the Novi God, as they call it in Russia, you stay up the whole evening. Typically, you watch a New Year oriented film. They've got certain films which they watch into the early hours of the morning, and it's usually a film which is set in the new year. There are one or two in particular that they like to watch, and they stay up throughout the whole night. I know that in the West they also do, like the Scots have got Hogmanay, and they also stay up and drink. But in Russia, even more so. So I kind of miss all those salads. And because I was married to a Russian woman for 20 years, um, we celebrated. I'll just tell you this: we celebrated Christmas twice when I was married to this Russian woman living here in the UK. On the 25th, that was the big celebration. She also wanted to celebrate the Russian Christmas on January the 6th, and she wanted to celebrate the New Year twice. So once is 12 o'clock UK time. In Russia, they're 3 hours ahead. So she also wanted to celebrate New Year at 9 o'clock. So that was quite a challenge, I'll tell you, doubling up on all the celebrations. Okay, so what did I do at Christmas this time? I'll tell you. So because I'm no longer married to that Russian woman, I divorced. Yeah, she was Orthodox Christian. Yeah, so I was married to a Christian for 20 years. And by the way, when I married her, um, religion wasn't a big deal for her. It became a big deal much later on for various reasons. Yeah, really big deal. Icons were all over the place. Yeah, so I was married to a Christian for 20 years, and for the last year, I've been involved with a Christian. Um, she's Austrian, and she's a Catholic, but she goes to a Protestant church here, and I've been going along with her. She knows that I'm an atheist, and one or two of them in the church know that I'm an atheist, and it's no big deal really. But I'm not going into that church stamping on anybody's toes. I'm not going in there proselytizing about my atheism. I just go in there, I observe, I take part in some of the, like I sing the hymns, for example. I don't pray, of course. I've taken Holy Communion just in case. I mean, just in case any of this is true, because I've heard some people go into church and they've taken Holy Communion for the first time, and bam, boom, they suddenly have this big experience. Not for me. And I'll tell you something, that Christianity was bizarre, a bizarre belief system when I first started. I mean, for a long time, for me, Christianity has been a really strange sort of set of beliefs, that people would believe these things, the idea of sin, that there's this set of rules around which Christianity is based, that we've got this transferable sin, and the solution for that was for God to come down in human form and undergo this sacrifice in order to clean out the sins of mankind. So that people would entertain these beliefs for a long time now has been something which I find really strange. And I know a lot of you guys find it strange as well. Um, Yet there are people who convert from atheism to Christianity and it's interesting to hear what they've got to say about it. But I'd like to say that it's becoming I'm becoming more antagonistic towards Christianity as time goes by, and I've been going to that church now for a year. I'm not too sure how much longer. I'm not too sure how much longer this is going to continue, because the relationship is kind of on the rocks a little bit. So there might well be changes for me. I might be on my own fairly soon. um, and then obviously that will be it as far as church is concerned. But I'm becoming more antagonistic towards Christianity as the months have rolled on. And I went to, how many services did I go to over Christmas? I didn't go to midnight mass. I went to, there was one on Christmas Eve, and then there was one on Christmas Day at 10 o'clock, which lasted half an hour. Yeah, okay. So I went to two, and then there was one the week before. So I'm feeling more and more antagonistic about Christianity and irritated. Mainly, what am I irritated about? I suppose I'm irritated that there are two ministers there. One is kind of worse than the other. One of them is, I find it quite nauseating to listen to him, and the way that he thinks he's got some kind of he thinks somehow that I don't know, what does he think? He probably thinks that he's good at his job. He probably thinks he's a good preacher, but I don't know, he thinks he's got some kind of authority or right to people's attention. And I suppose that people are sitting in those pews, and they are giving him that right to preach to them smugly and to proselytize on the Christian creed. So I don't know what I'm complaining about really, because after all, I'm going in there. But yeah, just to say that, because people have asked me, has it had any impact on you? Yeah, it's made me even more skeptical than I was before, even more baffled and bemused that people listen to this, what I think is nonsense, complete and utter nonsense. So, okay, let me just look at some of your comments. Um, yeah, let's have a look. Yeah, no, just sorry, just coming back to yeah, something really annoyed me when I went into that church a few days ago, because I was thinking, what has Jesus actually done? Because there are really clever people in the world. We live in a meritocracy, right? Where people are respected, people are respected, and people are rewarded based on how hard they work, their talent, the input that they've got. And I just wondered why Jesus is said to be the King of Kings, right? King of the world. Why? What is his merit? Why does he merit this title? What has he done which is so uh, good? What has he done which is so impressive? If you take Newton, what did Newton do? Well, he's the father of modern science. I mean, he actually did remarkable things. He developed calculus, worked out gravitational field, and did the mathematics. Newton actually deserves a lot of respect. Uh, I mean, he's like a kind of scientific god. Albert Einstein, too. A lot of these people, James Watt with the steam engine, people who have really done impressive things. The great composers, Beethoven, Mozart, Bach, uh, they've done really impressive things. All these people deserve my praise. They deserve your praise. What the hell did Jesus do to deserve this title, the King of Kings? And it seems to me he's done nothing more impressive than what um, the King of England's grandson has done to merit being first heir to the throne, merely by birth. It's a hierarchical sort of aristocracy of divinity that we've got. Jesus deserves no um, accolades. He deserves no praise, because all he is, if any of this is true, is just by birth, just by the bloodline, the same as the royals. And for those of us who want republics, we've been trying to get rid of the royals. So I think that there have been far more impressive human beings than Jesus of Nazareth. So that's what I'm sitting there thinking when I'm listening to this nonsense about Jesus came to be the salvation and to save us from all our sins. The problem of sin doesn't exist if there's no God. If there's no God, there's no need for, there's no sin, then there's no need for a salvation. So I think the most likely thing is that this solution to a problem about sin is not needed, because I don't believe there's a God. I don't believe in the concept of sin, that we need this salvation. Okay, so yeah, I've had my bit of a say on that. Let me just see what your comments are. Um, let's see. Kayla Martin says, the thing that annoys me about religion in general is people will justify atrocities with religion and then claim that stuff that isn't bad, they will claim it's bad against the God they believe in. Well, you know something. I was looking at a Facebook post the other day. Okay, Facebook. Actually, I don't really do social media, but I've got an account which I keep hidden. Nobody can see it except a very small number of my sort of friends and family. So people who try to search for me, they can't find me. I've got all my content hidden, but I've got a feed, and it kind of amuses me, some of the articles that come into my feed. And what was there? Yeah, there have been a lot of animal violence films recently. Well, for example, um, a lion attacking a small deer this size and eating it while it's still alive. Yeah. Or maybe no, actually, that's not a good example. Something else where an animal is attacked and then survives. Yeah, and somebody left a comment and said something to the effect, "Oh yes, God, either God provided a meal for that animal, or God helped that animal to survive and to l- live another day," or something to that. And I left. Yeah, no, it's about cherry picking. Yeah, I'm just coming on this theme that people will praise their God for the good things and then just ignore all the bad things. Yeah. So somebody left a comment that, yeah, isn't it wonderful? God made giraffes, God made lions. Isn't it fantastic? And all this world is balanced so well. And God made deer for the lions to feed on. And I left a comment. I said, yeah, and God made human beings intestines for parasitic worms to infest our intestines. God did that as well, right? God made fleas to feed off us to and to spread the plague, right? God made viruses. God made deadly bacteria. So when you hear Christians saying, "Praise the Lord," we've got beautiful lions, we've got tigers, aren't they magnificent? These are all God's beasts. Yeah, don't forget the parasites, don't forget Ebola, and don't forget all the nasties, all the filthy rats and everything that there is in the world. So not to forget all the um, all the things which Christians normally miss out. They only look at they talk about, oh, they can see God's work in the world, and they're looking at all the nice things that are happening, all the glorious things. We really live in a world that is consistent with there being no God. I mean, which God would invent or engineer deadly bacteria that can kill people, cholera, um, and all the horrible diseases? Because you can't have it. You can't say, well, God made us, but the devil made all the deadly bacteria. If the devil can make deadly bacteria, then the devil could have made human beings as well, surely. Okay, now let's have a look at some of your comments. Um, uh, okay, best in show. I've investigated the whole God thing for years. YouTube's dozens of books, my own thoughts. I finally determined that the definition and attributes of God are totally contradictory and incoherent. Well, it's one of the problems with, I suppose it's one of the problems that theists really start to flounder when you say define your God, or what are the features and characteristics of your God, and they'll talk about what their God can do, or they'll talk about qualities that goodness, love, and all these things. But we've got no sort of, these are just sort of abstractions. We've got no real sort of description of what a God is, except that maybe it's a being that has got these qualities. Um, what is the structure of this being? That's the thing. Oh, well, it's in the supernatural. It doesn't have a physical structure. Uh, a structure is like a human construct trying to describe things which are in the material world. And outside of the material world, in the supernatural world, the kind of description that you're looking for doesn't apply. Well, I mean, what am I supposed to do with that? How do you know any of this? How do you know there is even a supernatural world? That's the whole problem, isn't it? Okay, let's have a look at some of your comments. Any idea how much the royals bring into the British economy? Um, well, yeah, of course they do bring. They, I don't know. I don't know what the actual figures are. I know that the UK government spends about, I think, 300 million British pounds a year on the royal family. I don't know what the what the input is in terms of tourism, and I mean, I presume that even if we didn't have a royal family, we would still have tourism in the UK, because we've not just got the royal family, and Buckingham Palace would still exist for people to go and look around, even if we didn't have a royal family. But as it happens, I've been watching the Netflix series. Uh, there are three series. Victoria, about the early Queen Victoria. I've been watching that, and well, not just watching it. I've binge watched the whole lot over the last few days over Christmas. Uh, we watched the whole lot of them, and I found it quite interesting, particularly some of the political things that were going on. I'm surprised, in fact, that the prime minister and the foreign secretary in those days were consulting so much with Queen Victoria. It looked to me like half the time they spent in the palace. I was really sort of quite surprised. But anyway, I'm digressing. Okay, so a couple of things I want to talk about. Okay, so I've said my bit um, about going to church and how I'm becoming more antagonistic towards Christianity in particular. And oh yeah, I've witnessed a christening. What is it today? It's Monday. Yeah, Sunday. There was a christening in the church, and oh yeah, that was what really irritated me, because you've got this baby, and the mum's there, proud mum, proud dad, and they hand over their baby to this smug Christian minister. He's about 60 odd, my age. And yeah, he takes the baby and he takes the water, and, and then he walks up and down with this child, up and down the pews, to show off this new Christian child to everybody. And um, I don't know, it just looked also uh, pompous and ridiculous and unnecessary, and like he was doing something clever. And he's not doing anything clever at all, or anything beneficial. And of course, if you're a Christian and you believe all this stuff, you would disagree with me and say that he's saving a soul. He's cleansing this child who's been born into the world, tainted by the sin of Adam and Eve. Okay, I hope I continue to be antagonistic towards Christianity, increasingly so, because it gives me it propels me on my channel. the more antagonistic I feel about Christianity and other religions. It's it's a good thing for my channel. Now, I've got a £3,000 challenge. Now, here's my challenge, and I've already announced my challenge. Okay, my challenge is this: £3,000, and believe me, 3,000 is a lot of money to me. Quite a lot of money. I mean, I've got the money. I've got 3,000 if necessary. I've got that money ready to go. £3,000, which is about what, $4,500 US dollars. £3,000 to any of the following. Sorry, to Christian Aid, which is a Christian charity that does a lot of work in Africa. £3,000 will go to Christian Aid if, let me go through them: Alex O'Connor, Matt Dillahunty, Seth Andrews, say Sam Harris, Richard Dawkins. Who else is there? Anthony Magnabosco. Let's say Skeptics and Scoundrels. Eric, Jimmy Snow. Who else should we say? Who is a major sort of atheist? Somebody who you would think would never convert. Have I missed anybody out? Have I missed anybody out? So my pledge is that if any of these atheists convert to Christianity and announce it properly, like, you know, on their YouTube channel or something like that, and it's full-blown Christianity, not watered-down Christianity. In other words, they believe in the literal resurrection. They believe that Jesus Christ is the Son of a real supernatural God, and that Jesus rose from the dead, and they believe in the end times and the rapture. They believe in the virgin birth, and they believe in the miracles in the Bible. If they accept all of those and they make it clear to my satisfaction, and they don't deconvert back within 3 months, then at the end of the 3 months, I will donate and prove my donation of £3,000 to Christian Aid in the UK. I will provide a screenshot of the bank transfer to Christian Aid if any of those atheists convert to Christianity in the way that I've described. And to my own satisfaction, it's genuine. It's not a joke. It's not a experiment or anything like that. It is genuine. I will donate £3,000 to Christian Aid, and there it is. And the reason that I'm doing that is probably because, oh yes, Forrest Valkai, yeah, I actually put a post up. I mentioned Forrest Valkai, yeah, Forrest Valkai included. And I think one of the reasons I've done this is because I noticed that Alex O'Connor has got quite a few Christian friends on YouTube. Quite a few that are cheering him on, and also he's probably got several 100,000 subscribers who are Christians, and they're cheering him on as well, thinking that he's going to be the one that is most likely to convert to Christianity. So initially it was only Alex O'Connor that I'm prepared to pay this £3,000. Oh, and by the way, it includes me as well. If I convert to Christianity, I'll also pay £3,000. Yeah, so I did it for Alex O'Connor because I consider the chances of him converting to Christianity not so infinitesimally small that I'm prepared to make that pledge to donate the £3,000. I would actually, believe it or not, love Alex O'Connor. You know, when Christians think about, I mean, let's say Justin Brierley or William Lane Craig, they would throw up their hands in horror. They would probably go and, I mean, some would probably go out there and jump off a bridge if any of the important Christians out there deconverted. They would be shocked and they would be wringing their hands, and they would be genuinely very, very upset. As for me, believe it or not, if Alex O'Connor converts to Christianity, I'll be laughing my head off. I mean, I really will. I think it would be absolutely hilarious if Alex O'Connor converts to, or any of Matt Dillahunty, etc. I mean, it would be so amazingly, it would be so sensational. Of course, I'd want to know why, but I mean, the amusement value alone from Alex O'Connor converting to Christianity would be hilarious. I mean, look, I got a lot of amusement from Alex O'Connor deconverting from veganism. Yeah, I admit it. I found that funny, more than funny. I found it hilarious because I'd read hundreds of comments from vegans who saw Alex as being the standard bearer for the vegan movement, the young face, the young intellectual face, the progressive young man who is going to carry the hopes of veganism into the future. Because let's face it, veganism has been kind of failing a bit. I mean, there are bigger issues in the world out there. Veganism really is not getting through with its message. It's trying to, but it's only vegans who are watching those videos, etc. And there are so many other big issues which have really eclipsed veganism. At one time, veganism was really a much bigger thing than it is now. Now it's become this kind of niche area for uh, disgruntled vegetarians to um, beat the moral drum and beat up on non-vegans, and they've got a sort of bad reputation among non-vegans. They're not getting through with the persuasion. So yeah, obviously, I did find it funny when Alex O'Connor deconverted, because I saw how quickly people can turn on you. And I saw a lot of vegans turning on Alex O'Connor. But it's also dangerous as a YouTube personality to suddenly come out. If I was him and I converted to veganism, I would have kept my mouth shut. Absolutely, because there's always this danger that people will look up to you and uh, use you as an example, worship you even. And imagine the letdown, imagine the hatred, imagine the vitriol and criticism if you have got to come out and say, okay, I'm sorry, but I've had problems with the vegan diet. It's not really worked for me. So he's had a lot of trouble. He's come through it, which obviously is good. Thanks, Jim. It's a pleasure. I enjoy doing this. So yeah, thanks for that. Thanks for the $5. Um, I'll enjoy a coffee at Starbucks with that. No, not a coffee. I'll enjoy hot chocolate with. I like to have a big hot chocolate with cream on top, and chocolate sprinkles and everything. $5 should about cover that. So yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. So yeah, Alex O'Connor, I would really find it hilarious. Now look, vegan the vegan world is a lot more toxic than religion, believe it or not, but it is. I think that politics is the most toxic world there is. Veganism is probably a close second. I mean, religion is way down there. I don't actually think that apologetics and counter apologetics is that toxic. It's not really. It's not. But I've looked at vegan videos and political videos, and it is really toxic. The polarization that goes on, people almost wish each other dead. Look, nobody in let's not say nobody, because Matt Dillahunty has said there are people out there that wish him dead. Yeah, and I believe that. There are people out there that hate there are people out there that hate Richard Dawkins because he's been on YouTube reading out some of his mail. And no doubt, yeah, but by and large, I wouldn't say that. Look, if what I'm doing was that toxic, I wouldn't be in it. Okay, so the worst that's going to happen to me is that Christians will come onto my channel and they'll say, Stuart, you've got absolutely no idea what you're talking about. You haven't studied the Bible. You haven't grasped the philosophy of Thomas Aquinas. You don't understand the five proofs. You're ignorant, and that's why you don't believe in God. I mean, look, that's virtually the worst thing that is probably the worst thing that's ever been said to me about my atheism, and I don't really consider that to be toxic. I mean, if they accused me of something because I'm an atheist, if they accused me of some atrocity and said, "Oh, I bet you do this, and I bet you do this practice and that practice. I bet you abuse this, I bet you abuse people or something," then I mean, actually, I would just laugh about that because nobody could have any justification for saying that. But the world of veganism and politics is so incredibly toxic. I'm glad not to be in it. And I made a mistake a few weeks ago. I made a mistake a few weeks ago when I commented on Joe Biden pardoning his son. I shouldn't have commented on it. I regret it. I didn't want to get into American politics, and I didn't really want to get into politics. I made a comment on that, and I lost a few subscribers. Somebody thought that because I thought that was an abuse of power, that it automatically meant that I was this big Donald Trump fan, and that I support all of his values. I support anti-abortion and all the rhetoric and all the nonsense that Donald Trump's been coming out with. Somebody thought that because I dared to criticize Joe Biden, I'm not even American, automatically it means that I'm all for Donald Trump. And that's not the case. And I lost a subscriber because of that. He said, "Stuart, good luck. I'm out of here. I'm not going to look at your channel anymore." And yeah, so definitely politics, vegan values. And I mean, look, I mean, even you've got flat Earth, you've got conspiracy theories. There's some toxicity there, but nothing that compares with veganism and politics. I'm trying to think of what else there is. Uh, Misogyny is probably another one, and it's one of the disturbing trends that we're seeing online. And I wish that YouTube would do a lot more. I think they've closed Andrew and Tristan Tate's channel down. Um, Jordan Peterson, I think that he's probably got a lot to answer for. His misogyny is a bit more intellectual and subtle than, say, the Tates, but he's kind of helping to fuel it all. So, yeah, there's a lot of toxicity out there, but I don't consider that what I'm doing, in apologetics and counter apologetics, is really toxic. The only danger is, of course, that with Islam, it could become toxic because Muslims are prepared to kill. No, let me correct that straight away. Sorry. There are a very, very small percentage of fanatical, radicalized Muslims who might be prepared to kill me for, I don't know, making a statement about Islam which upsets them. I might find one of them one day. One of them might track me down because I've made a few sort of anti-Islamic videos. One of them might track me down. I might find somebody standing outside of my door one day, but I think that's highly unlikely. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't be criticizing Islam. And I've had Muslims say to me, "You're a coward." I've had Muslims on my channel saying, "You are a coward. You know that in your country you're safe. So you can say what you like about Islam. You are a coward. You would not dare say that on the streets of Iran. You, Stuart, unrepentant atheist, you are a coward." you know, well, absolutely. When it comes to criticizing Islam in a country like Iran or Syria, yeah, couldn't agree more. I'm the biggest coward there is. I would be absolutely petrified. Absolutely. Couldn't agree with you more. Um, yeah. But of course, in my own country, uh, we've got freedom of speech. I think it's incredibly unlikely. but they're making this point against me, like somehow I don't know what point they're making. Um, I mean, it's not doing them any credit that they're trying to say that I'm exercising my freedom of speech because I feel safe where I am, which seems to me like quite a reasonable thing because you wouldn't exercise, you wouldn't expose your opinions in an environment where you were likely to suffer repercussions, would you? So I don't really quite get their point. What's the critique on me that I wouldn't be prepared to expose my true views on Islam on the streets of Tehran, for example? What's their point to me that I'm a coward? Yeah, absolutely. When it comes to my personal safety, yeah, I admit I'm a coward. If I see drunks coming out of a pub at night, I usually cross the road. Um, I remember there was one night when I came home quite late. I live on a I live on a sort of main street. There are pubs around, and it was 2 o'clock in the morning, and there were two drunks who were stood outside the door that leads up to my flat. I sat in my car for 15 minutes, and they were standing shouting outside this door. And I thought it more prudent to sit in my car and wait until finally they cleared out of the way and walked on before I went to my door and walked in. Yeah, uh, is that cowardly or is it just prudent? I think that's prudence, and I think it's prudent not to um, expose your views or reveal your views in a situation that could put you in danger. So I don't really quite see that criticism. Um, okay, so where were we? Yes, I wanted to talk about. I've talked about the £3,000 challenge. All right. Now I've been watching one or two videos on true crime. Yeah, I watch. I'm interested in certain true crime stories, and there are a couple of true crime stories which have interested me, and there's been some religious element. So, for example, the Chris Watts story, which I don't know how many of you guys know who Chris Watts is, but I mean, effectively, he had a wife, he had two daughters. He met a woman who he preferred, and it seems that rather than leave his wife and two daughters, he decided to kill all three of them. So I've been following this story with some bizarre kind of morbid curiosity about why somebody would do what could drive somebody to do such a thing. So the point about Chris Watts is he was sentenced to life imprisonment with no possibility of parole. Okay. Now, it's not unusual for people who go to prison who have been hitherto unreligious to convert to Christianity. So Chris Watts has been sitting in prison, in jail. He's been sitting there and he's now saying that God has got a plan for him. God has got a plan for this Chris Watts, and this isn't the end for him. The end for him is not spending the rest of his life in prison. So he's been trying to launch various appeals. He thinks that he's got a message that he can bring to people, I think, in connection with his new religious views, and that if he could only get out of prison, he could then fulfill God's plan for him. And I found it kind of sick in a way that God's plan involved the murder of a woman and two little girls. I found it really. This is what the this is where it can lead. This this is where it can go with religion. That you've somehow got to account for. If you say that something is part of God's plan, like for example, if you should we say you're in a car accident and I don't know you're paralyzed or something like that, or you've got some big problem and you manage to get over it. And let's say that you were in an accident that involved the deaths of two other people. You go into hospital, you know, your legs are absolutely smashed to pieces, and it takes years for them to help. They put pins in your legs, and they manage to eventually, with a lot of therapy, get you walking again. And you might say, yeah, this was all part of God's plan for me, through adversity, to discover, I don't know, the grace and yeah, the grace and kindness of God. This is part of God's plan. That I've learned a lot from this through adversity. So then, as part of God's plan, then presumably that car accident had to happen, and two people had to die, and maybe you were the cause of that accident. That's all part of God's plan as well, right? So this is how the selective, particularly Christian imagination works. The cherry picking that goes on is, well, hilarious is not the word, but uh, it's really inconsistent with any kind of reasonable assessment of what has really happened and what is what is really going on. So anyway, yeah, that's Chris Watts. I believe he's still in prison. He's failed with all his appeals so far, and um, but he's still talking about religion. He's still talking about God's plan for him, and I think it's I mean, obviously, it's got to be a huge insult for the parents, and people who were related to his family. So I don't know. That's a bizarre one. Okay, and then the other one I wanted to talk about, and there's no sort of religious angle on this. This is just very quickly. There's been another big, absolutely unbelievable crime story which has hit absolute world headlines. This is the biggest. This is the most shocking, incredible news story probably the world has ever seen. Let's see if any of you guys in chat, which news story, which true crime am I going to talk about? Um, which true? Who's muted? Sweet. I think I'm still going. Nobody's muted. I haven't been muting any. I haven't been muting anybody. Am I still coming through loud and clear? I hope so. Yes, I am. I can see. I've got one dot, which means that you can hear me. Maybe I'll move the microphone a bit closer to my mouth. Okay, not muted. No, I'm not muted. Good. Okay, so what is the thanks, Grumpy Librarian? What is this big news story which has absolutely blown my mind and has blown the minds? This crime is going to be analyzed. Do you remember the film Seven? Do you remember the film Seven and what he did, the seven deadly sins and everything? And when he was when Kevin Spacey, the John Doe character, was in the back of the police car with Morgan Freeman and who else was in it? Brad Pitt characters, the detectives. He was sitting there with a self-satisfied grin on his face saying, this is going to be analyzed for decades, for hundreds of years, my crime. Well, this crime that happened I think is going to be analyzed. It's going to be a case study for decades, and it's absolutely unbelievable crime. There's no real religious angle on this, but I just thought I'd mention it. Nobody's really been able to guess what it is. Maybe because most of you guys in America probably don't get much of the news from Europe, what's going on here. But anyway, I'll just say what it was. It's the Giselle Pellico story, where, just to summarize briefly, she is I think, 75-year-old woman, and her husband, over a period of 10 years, was sedating her and drugging her, and then through the dark web, inviting men to come to his house and rape her while she was sedated and asleep. And he got away with it for 10 years. And apparently he invited about 80 different men around, and he recorded it all on video, and they managed to catch 50 of them. And this is just such a mind-blowing story. Mind-blowing is probably the wrong word. I mean, The Dark Side of the Moon by Pink Floyd is a mind-blowing example of progressive rock. I mean, it's a mind-blowing album, isn't it? Right? Beethoven's Ninth Symphony is a mind-blowing piece of art, right? Michelangelo is mind-blowing as an artist. So yeah, mind-blowing is the wrong word. What's the word for this absolute atrocity that Giselle Pellico's husband committed on her? So yeah, I'm still absorbing. I think the world is still absorbing that this sort of crime that, I mean, that the scale of it. I think what I find really shocking, apart from anything else, is that these men found 80 men within a 30-mile radius of Avignon, where he lives in France. 30-mile radius. He was able to find 80 men in France within 30 miles. And I mean, around Avignon, it's not that densely populated. He was able to find 80 men within a 30-mile radius who prepared to rape a sedated woman in her mid to late 60s. I find absolutely unbelievable, because what it means is that there are a lot more sickos out there than we previously thought. That is a heck of a lot. I wonder whether that is something that is peculiar to France, or whether we could find the same percentage of men in any country that would be prepared to commit that kind of crime. And that not one of them over a 10-year period thought of reporting this to the police. I'm actually shocked that the French police are not infiltrating these forums to find out where these crimes are actually happening, because who knows, this might just be the tip of the iceberg. Okay, yeah. So I mean, obviously, I know that there are large numbers of people on the sex offender register anywhere you go in the UK. I've heard, for example, I don't know how accurate it is, but even in a population, a small town of, say, 10,000 people, 20,000 people, there could easily be 200 men on the sex offender register, which is a mind-boggling number of men on the sex offender register. It's absolutely shocking, really. I don't know. I don't know how to address this, and I don't know what the cure is. But I know one thing: that people like the Tates, people like Jordan Peterson, are not going to make this situation any better. They're going to make it worse. I'm not saying they're to blame for it, but they're stoking up these anti-women feelings, and I don't know how else to describe them. Okay, so I'm certainly covering some topics tonight, and I hope I won't get any hate over anything that I've said so far. Okay, I've not really talked about the call, one or two. Let's just go over one or two calls that went out on the line on Sunday. By the way, I have noticed in the last few weeks, I know I've criticized the pairing of Forrest and Matt. I don't really think they work particularly well together. Yeah, I don't really think they work well together. And it doesn't surprise me too much that Matt and Forrest have not been paired up in the last 2 or 3 weeks. And I think it's possible that maybe Jimmy Snow, he's the one that is running the show. He owns the business. And maybe he looked at the show, thought, oh, Forrest and Matt not really working too well together. Matt seems very quiet when Forrest is on. Actually, let's keep them apart. And I think maybe it's possible that that's happened, which would kind of confirm and maybe validate some of the criticism that I've had. So, I mean, by and large, I find Forrest okay, except for when he's on with Matt. I just don't think it works. I almost think that Forrest is playing up in front of Matt, but somehow when he's on with another host, he seems to be a lot sort of more level. He's far less animated, and we see we see him a lot more measured when he's not on with Matt. But when he's with Matt, he really sort of goes for it and kind of hogs the limelight. And Matt has trouble getting a word in. Having said that, there are those of you who disagree with me and think they work together. So you're entitled to your view. I'm entitled to mine. Okay, yeah. So one of the calls, Steve called in. He called in to claim that the Bible is not pro-slavery. Okay, well, I'm not going to go over that because I think that obviously it's been well established. You can't get away. It's very uncomfortable. Some of the passages in the Old Testament are very uncomfortable. You can try and write it off as indentured servitude. You can try and say, well, they were conquering people and they could either kill the men or they could take them as slaves. So it was a good thing that they were doing. And I remember somebody once called in and said, well, what do you expect we're going to do? What did you expect them to do? Did you expect them to conquer a people and then let the conquered people go? And actually, well, yes, that's what we do in modern times. Well, kind of more or less. There's the I think the Geneva Convention on war, and yeah, you are supposed to, you take somebody prisoner, you treat them in a humane way, and then you release them, either when the conflict is concluded or before that. I don't know, but yeah. Okay, so let's not get into the slavery thing. It was more interesting, and I give Matt a lot of credit for this, that Steve called in to talk about this thing about the Bible's not pro-slavery. Matt got fed up with that, and he said, okay, which God do you believe in and why? Good, I like that, brilliant. That's what we want. I don't like it when people call in and they want to talk about anything except for why they believe in God. So it was really quite strange, though. Steve called in to defend the Bible, and guess what? It turns out that Steve doesn't believe in the Christian God, and he doesn't really seem to believe in any kind of God that would be found in the Bible. What Steve believes in is that God is some kind of super advanced alien, and it would have to be super advanced because apparently the genetic code has got alien intelligence written all over it. Okay. Now, I definitely think that people are unjustifiably ruling out natural causation for what we've got today in nature. A lot of Christians are saying about genetics, about DNA, about abiogenesis, it could not have happened by nature alone. Of course, they will phrase it differently. They will say it couldn't have happened by chance alone, happenstance or blind chance. This couldn't have happened by chance. Yeah, we've got genetics, we've got genetic code. Code requires a coder in the same way that a computer program requires a coder. It's obvious that there must have been an intelligence behind the design of human beings. And a lot of people think this is a supernatural God, like the Christian God. And there are these other people who think that we were put here by aliens. And as I've said, my best friend is a conspiracy theorist, and he's bought into this as well, that human beings are the result of an alien intelligence, the design expertise of extremely advanced technology and intellect. Yeah, they're ruling out natural causation, which I find strange because we've got no examples of alien intelligence, right? First thing, we've got no examples of alien life, full stop. We've got no examples of demonstrated supernatural beings. Yeah, so of course we can't say that there's no supernatural. We can't say that there are no super advanced alien beings that could have done this. We can't rule that out, but we also can't rule out natural causation. And because we know that nature exists and that these other proposed solutions to the state of affairs that we've got today, in other words, very advanced life in the form of human beings and the great diversity of life, because we've only got nature, that my money would be on nature because there's nothing else on the table in terms of anything that's been demonstrated to be real. So at the moment, although I can't definitively say that it was natural causation, if I was a betting man, I would put my money on nature. If I had to bet, should we say, what should we say? I don't know. Something that's really important to me. Okay, right. If I had to make a bet on whether it's natural causation or it's either something from the supernatural, in other words, a god, or super advanced life being the cause of human beings, designing human beings, etc. So it's either natural causation, abiogenesis, and evolution all the way, unguided process. It's either that, or it's a god, or it's alien super advanced technology. And I had to bet the life of either myself or somebody close to me. What do you think I'm going to choose? If you're a Christian, what are you going to choose if it's for real? If there's a gun pointed at the head of the person you're closest to the most and you're put on the spot, what is it? Is it your God or is it nature? And the person that's going to pull this trigger truly knows the answer. A bit like, I don't know, in Squid Game or something like that. I don't know. Yeah, if you're put on the spot, what are you going to bet on? I know I would bet on nature without hesitation. I'm not going to bet on something like a god when we haven't even got any proof that the supernatural exists. I'd go for nature. As a betting man, I'd have to go for that. And if it proved out I was wrong, if it was proved I was wrong and somebody close to me was killed, I would say, well, I went with the reasonable, rational choice. I happen to be wrong, but I would put the odds on nature, not on something which hasn't been demonstrated to exist. Aliens, gods, these are all just, as far as we know at the moment, just stories. Now, that's not me ruling out them, as a lot of theists will say, oh, well, you're ruling out gods, are you? You're saying that God doesn't exist. Prove it. No, that's not what I'm saying. But I've got no belief in those claims. So yeah, Steve, when Matt said, okay, you're saying that the genetic code couldn't have come about by nature alone. How do you prove that? He said, oh, well, there's been a paper written. There's a paper online. I've seen it. That's the proof. I mean, it's like you can just say, you could take anything. You know, I could take, I don't know, aliens. I could say, well, there are definitely aliens out there and really advanced ones as well. How do you know that? Oh, there's a paper been written. Yeah, you can find it online. There's a paper written proving that there are aliens out there, really advanced ones. Yeah, you can justify any claim by just saying, oh, there's a paper out there. Saying there's a paper out there is not the same as presenting real evidence, is it? And he couldn't even say anything about what was in the paper. And to be fair, Matt did say to him, well, send me your paper, send me a link to the paper, send me your evidence, and I'll take a look at it. Which is fair enough. Although he probably won't, but I don't blame him. Okay, and yeah, and of course with the ETs, yeah, the extraterrestrials, Steve said he went to this. Oh yeah, the US Navy have got the information. There have been these objects which shoot off at the speed of light, or they move in a way that's impossible. And I mean, this has all been sort of analyzed and kind of debunked. I've looked at the footage, and experts have determined that there's nothing really that unusual going on here. Okay, so yeah, I mean, so much for alternative explanations to life and the diversity of life. Still waiting for evidence that any of these things is actually real. My money's on natural causation, unguided process. Yeah, I think that's probable, and I don't believe there's a benevolent God creating things, creating life. I think that's so incredibly unlikely. I would wonder why we've got all these horrible things in the world like deadly bacteria, viruses. Why would life need viruses? Why would a benevolent God design viruses? It doesn't make any sense. Okay, yeah, let me just have a quick look at your comments. This is lasting longer than I thought it would. Thank you for tuning in, everybody. Let's see, there were atheists in 500 BC, long before science. Yep. Yeah. You know, there were atheists in the Middle Ages. I actually read a book about history of atheism. It was an extremely dangerous thing to be an atheist in the Middle Ages. It really was. I read a story about in England how there were some atheists who got organized, and they wanted to present their case to a royal court or something, someplace with authority. And they went and presented their evidence, or they said at least, look, we don't believe in any God, we don't believe in Christianity, and we've come here to testify our disbelief. We don't think any of this is true. And you know what they did to them? They took the three of them, they tied them up. It was a freezing cold night. They took them into the middle of the English countryside. They stripped them down. They left them naked in the countryside, and they rode away and left them there, and they froze to death. So yeah, it was an extremely dangerous time to be an atheist. But yeah, it's quite an interesting topic, actually, atheism throughout the ages. Let's see. Okay. Just excuse me a moment while I have a quick skim. Yeah, yeah, of course, aliens is not supernatural. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, exactly. And when my best friend says to me, "Oh yeah, it was aliens." And by the way, he doesn't just believe that aliens put us here. He also believes that aliens are behind every significant advance in technology, science, and mathematics. I mean, all of it. Newton, the whole lot. It's all aliens that told Newton about gravity, calculus, everything. So apparently, human beings are really stupid. Which actually, in a way, we are, because, but there's a very, very small percentage of us, fortunately, who are really clever, and they're the ones who have advanced humanity. Yeah. So my question to my friend is, okay, fine, you've kicked the can down the road. Congratulations. So we were engineered. Who engineered the aliens? Yeah. What is it? Turtles all the way down? Yeah. So you can kick the can down the road, the same as you do with God. Oh, yeah, God engineered us. Okay. Who engineered God? Oh, well, he's always been here. No, that's a special pleading rule. That's a special pleading fallacy. I don't accept it. Okay. What was the name of the book? Jim? Yeah, I can tell you what the name of the book was. Oh dear, what was it? It was an Oxford University Press book, and what was it called? It was the middle. It was the middle period after the conquest between 1250 and 1450. Yeah, the Angevins and the Plantagenets. It's a brilliant book. It's covered the 200 years, that time period. I can't remember the exact, but yeah, it's Oxford University Press. It's like a 700-page book. And yeah, I found that information about There was a chapter on religious belief, and yeah, it included that information about atheists. And there was also an interesting chapter on attitudes to the Jews, that in the north of England, there were a lot of Jews in a particular town. I think it might have been York or Leeds or something like that. And they were subsisting by money lending. And the local people who were indebted to these Jewish money lenders took up arms against them, chased them into a castle, and those Jews, rather than give themselves up, all committed suicide. They all killed themselves, and they killed their children as well, rather than fall into the hands of this Christian mob. Anyway, I'm just digressing, but that is a really fascinating book with all the detail in it. Okay, so sorry, you're probably asking. There are conversations going on, and maybe when Jim's asking what was the name of the book, you're asking, maybe you're asking somebody else about a book that somebody mentioned in chat. I don't know. Magic and Witchcraft in Europe Before Christianity. Is that the name of the book? Okay. I'm talking about something else, but I hope you'll try and find any of you who are interested. That is a really fascinating period in English history, very barbaric time, a time in which it seems that the standard punishment for virtually any crime, from petty theft upwards, was castration and blinding. That was the standard punishment. So yeah, very brutal times. Okay, let me see. Oh yes, okay. So there was another call, Johnny. So yeah, Johnny called in, and his call went on for some time, but there was only one thing that interested me there, because he was asked to justify his beliefs. Why do you believe in Christianity? And he said this thing about, well, I've researched it, and there were so many people, so many biblical figures who died for their beliefs. They were martyred. They died in great pain. It makes me think it's true. So yeah, Johnny sort of left that, and I was thinking, I hope Matt comes back to that, because that is such a common reason that Christians hold on to. I hope Matt comes back and says something about that. And sure enough, a few minutes later, he said to Johnny, you cited this, what you think is a fact, that people died for their beliefs, that the apostles all were brutally martyred, and they would have only been brutally martyred and been prepared to die only if their beliefs were actually true, and that therefore I'm going to believe too. Okay, so I'm glad that Matt came back to this. This is one thing that really interests me, and I've done some study on this. And so Matt's point was that people's conviction that something is true and their willingness to die for it does not mean necessarily that what they believe is true is truly true. Yeah. Okay. So absolutely. First of all, if I was writing the Gospels and I wanted to convince people that this is the truth, do you know what I would do? I would invent a few martyrs. I would say, right, Peter, Thomas, and James, these apostles who witnessed Jesus walking around, they actually were confronted and they were challenged, and they admitted their beliefs. They stood by them despite the fact they knew that they were going to be martyred. They were threatened with horrible, painful deaths, and they would not flinch and stood by their beliefs and would not denounce their beliefs, even though they were horribly martyred. And this happened. So yeah, if I was writing a gospel, I would definitely put miracles in there. I would definitely put martyrs in there who were prepared to die for the truth of what they'd seen, because after all, they were eyewitnesses. They really saw it and they were prepared to die for what they saw. I would put all these things in. I would try to um, corroborate the detail with these witnesses and with this willingness to die horrible, painful deaths. I would absolutely do that. You'd be a fool not to put proof in of that kind. And you'd be an even bigger fool to read it and not understand how these narratives are constructed to convince the gullible. So, I'm sorry, I was sitting in a church before I got into it. Before I got into atheism, um, I was sitting in a church 25, 30 years ago for a concert. I don't know what it was. It was a requiem or some piece of church music. And I was sitting next to a middle-aged man. I wasn't middle-aged like I am now. I mean, I was only like sort of early 30s or something like that. And I hadn't really thought, I just thought, I didn't believe in God, but I didn't have the knowledge now. I didn't have the knowledge then that I've got now about how to counter positions, how to ask questions, and how to challenge people. And we were talking about our beliefs. I said, no, I don't really believe in the Bible. And I said to him, do you believe in these miracles? He said, oh, yeah, of course. So I've got no trouble at all believing in the miracles. And I'm not sure why. I didn't ask why. Why do you believe in the miracles? Maybe they're just stories in a book put in to impress people like you. Unfortunately, that moment was lost and I'll never know. So, yeah, I mean, people should really understand how narratives are created and how religions try to prove themselves and how narratives try to prove themselves. I mean, look, even well, of course, in quality works of fiction, they're constructed in such a way that they seem really believable. And in the Gospels, they do exactly the same thing, except that the Gospels have got a problem because they're putting into the narrative extraordinary claims. So when Dickens writes A Tale of Two Cities, for example, there's nothing in there which is supernatural. There are no truly extraordinary claims going on in A Tale of Two Cities. It's a remarkable story, and I suppose the most remarkable thing that happens in A Tale of Two Cities is that a man would be prepared to have his head cut off for a woman who doesn't love him, and for her beloved and her children, that a man would be prepared to self-sacrifice himself. That's probably the most extraordinary claim in A Tale of Two Cities. But there's nothing supernatural in that. It's maybe some silly Sidney Carton was just some sentimental sort of self-sacrificial man who probably never believed that he had never really done anything good in life, and he wanted to finally prove that he could do something good in life. There's nothing extraordinary about that. But in the narratives which make up the Gospels, there's a lot of extraordinary things going on. And how do you prove it? Well, you prove it with eyewitnesses. You prove it with people who are prepared to undergo tremendous suffering. So, yeah, this is how you do it. Yeah, eyewitnesses. And they've done it with eyewitnesses who were the martyrs, who were the apostles, who supposedly died. But even there, I think that we only learn about two apostles from the Bible, from the Gospels. We only learn about two apostles dying. One is Judas, of course, who kills himself. And I'm not sure who the other one is. I can't remember. But most of the apostles that we supposedly know about who died horrible deaths for their beliefs, those reports come from what the founding fathers did in, I think, the second century. These are from church tradition, how the apostles died. They're not in the Gospels. But even if they were, it wouldn't make any difference to me, because I know how narratives are made, and I know how narratives try to justify their claims. So yeah, I'm not impressed at all by these stories and by these supposed martyrdoms and by these supposed witnesses. Not impressed at all, but unfortunately, a lot of people are. Okay, let's see what else. Let me just see if what your comments are. Yeah, okay. Grumpy Librarian says Steve's papers so far have been a good example of misplaced authority and shady publication practices. Oh, really? Published in wrong journal, referencing claim. Okay, I've not really been following Steve, so but I know that Matt said that he's been bombarded with Steve's emails. Okay, let's see. What was the name? Okay. Okay, right. I think that's cut. Let's just see if there's anything else which I've missed out. I think I've covered everything really. Oh yeah, one more thing. Yeah, last thing. Okay. So I don't usually get involved in the comments on my videos. Occasionally I get involved, and somebody left a comment saying that do you acknowledge that Christian culture has been the most economically and scientifically successful culture in the world in history? And I shouldn't have really bitten on that, but I came back and said, well, um, it's true that countries which have embraced Christianity in history have been the most economically powerful and the most scientifically advanced in the world. I said, yes, that is true. That is absolutely true, but that that doesn't mean that the claims of Christianity are true. So my point being, if you're going to argue from utility, you could have a false but very useful religion, a religion that encourages learning, and a religion which somehow makes your society more successful than any others. You could have a false religion. You could invent a religion which has got a good rule book and a good ethical book and a good work ethic built into it that makes your society more advanced than other societies that have got maybe other religions or no religion at all. So yes, I absolutely concede that point. That is absolutely correct. But that doesn't mean that all of the claims in that religion are true. It may well be that that religion has got really useful things about it, but that it's got also things which are false. So we kind of went backwards and forwards on that, and then he started saying, well, how can you deny, how can you deny that the earth was created? How can you deny that again, back to the genetic code? How could you claim that this came about naturally? Yeah, so obviously I dealt with that, and then he started, and then somebody else chimed in, actually oddly enough an atheist, so somebody who was not a believer, and accused me of having anti-theist dogma. I'll tell you what video this was. This was the one that a Catholic priest and Alex O'Connor were discussing religion. We're discussing Christianity, etc. We're discussing in particular, why is it that a lot of people go out looking for God but never find God? Yeah, I remember now. Okay. Yeah. And I made a comment I made a comment that Father Pine, this Catholic priest, he seemed like a very intelligent man, very articulate, and I felt sad that he was doing this with his life, that he was obviously a very capable person, and that I thought that he could find something better to do with his time than what he's doing, which is being a Catholic priest. I didn't think that what he was doing with his life is terribly useful. Yeah, and yeah, so this is how it started, this topic, and somebody accused me of anti-theist dogma, and my question to that was, okay, give me an example of anti-theist dogma and how I'm tainted by it. What am I doing which is a sign of anti-theist dogma? I asked this question and I never got a response, unfortunately. And then the Christian who had sort of started all this said to me that I'm denying scientific facts and that I'm biased. Okay, and my question to that is, okay, which scientific facts am I ignoring and how do you know? I asked that question. I haven't had any response. Okay, well, I think that's it now. I think I've gone on for long enough. I'd like to thank you all for listening. I didn't think it would be this long. It's 12:30 here in the UK. It's the 31st. It's the day before 2025. I'm absolutely amazed that it's 2025. I was talking to somebody just a few days ago, somebody who's older than me, somebody who was born in the late 40s. And we were talking about how in the 70s, it was generally thought that by the year 2000, there would be regular trips to the moon, that things would be a lot more. We imagined, I think, in the 70s that things would be a lot more advanced than they actually are. And that really the big changes in technology have really been in communications. I mean, cars, okay, they're more efficient, they're smoother, they run smoother. And I suppose there are cars which now run on electricity. But really, I mean, in terms of the way we get around, and people still watch TV like they did 50, 60 years ago. And, I mean, there are some changes, but if you took somebody from the 70s and transported them to now, 2025, nearly 2025, and just dropped them in the street and they walked around, apart from cars being more advanced and looking different, it would probably be a while before they realized that they were kind of in a different time. I suppose that they might walk into a TV shop and see that TVs are now all flat and not sort of these big things. And they might, but I mean, by and large, if you look around, things aren't sort of massively different now compared with 50, 60 years ago. And I find that kind of amusing in a way, because I remember in the 70s, there was a show on TV called Space 1999. Yeah, Space 1999, showing that there was a moon base Alpha on the moon, of course. And there were regular trips there. There were people living there. They were doing research, etc., etc. And I just find it funny that in the 70s, people believed that in just 20, 30 years, we'd be reaching out into space. There'd be trips to Mars. There'd be like holiday trips to the moon. And, all this, we'll be living in these space age houses where everything's automatic, everything's voice activated and everything. And I mean, none of it's really happened. All we've got really, the really big thing is that we've got these mobile phones, which is like this communication and entertainment device. This has been the single probably biggest change in people's lives, that we've got these phones that we can now carry around with us and communicate with people at will easily and get news whenever we want it. This has been the single biggest difference, that if somebody came from 50, 60 years ago and landed in 2025, the thing they'd be most amazed with is a mobile phone, a smartphone. And if you said to them, look, a world of information is at your fingertips, video chat, that kind of thing. So I remember in the film 2001, when Professor Floyd goes to the moon, that he has a video chat with his daughter or something. And I suppose that that's one thing that has happened, hasn't it? That we can now have video chats. That's one thing that, Space 2001, A Space Odyssey was right about. But by and large, all those films were kind of wrong in the sense that 30, 40 years from the 60s and 70s, people more or less lived the same way that they did, apart from these smartphones and computers. People more or less lived the same way that they did decades ago. Nothing too much has changed. I mean, even aeroplanes. Look, I mean, a Boeing 737 looks virtually the same as a Boeing 37 made in the 70s. Technology, I mean, airplane technology hasn't sort of massively improved. I mean, we had Concorde in the 80s, the most advanced passenger liner the world has ever seen. So, yeah. Anyway, I don't know why I talked about that. Only probably because we got the new year coming. We've got 2025, which, I mean, in the year 2000, when it clipped over from 1999 to 2000, it seemed like we were sort of moving into the futuristic age. And here we are in 2025. Time is merciless. It just keeps marching forwards. It just won't stop. And yep. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. And I'd like to wish all of you Happy New Year. I hope you have a fantastic 2025. I hope that 2025 is a better year. I hope that we don't have any of these. We had this horrible atrocities, Gaza. The war. We've got the Ukrainian war going on. I hope that 2025 is going to be a big improvement. Of course, we've got Donald Trump in the White House. What am I saying? I hope that 2025 will be an improvement, nevertheless, on 2024. So anyway, Happy New Year to everybody. Thanks for following my channel. I'll be back after the new year. Look forward to seeing you again. Bye for now.